Hey guys, Joe from Extreme Terrain, and today I'm going to be reviewing and showing you how to install the K&N Series 63 AirCharger cold air intake fitting all 16 and newer 3.5 Tacomas. This kit is going to be perfect for the Tacoma owner who's looking to replace their 3.5's restricted factory cold air intake with an upgraded cold air intake that is one of the most well manufactured and engineered kits on the market from one of the biggest name brands in the business, all at a reasonable price. Now, cold air kits in general are not only going to be drawing more air into the engine, but cooler and therefore denser with oxygen air as well. Giving your engine more oxygen to burn is going to lead to horsepower, throttle response, and a little bit of intake noise. The K&N Series 63 achieves that in a couple of ways. Firstly, we have this free-flowing polyethylene intake tube here that is going to promote a nice, clean flow of air into the throttle body. We also have a nice open box design that adds to the looks a lot. On top of that, it's going to shield the intake from any hot air in the engine bay and allow easy access to our high flow K&N air filter. That K&N filter is also washable and reusable. So if this filter ever does get dirty, you can take it out, clean it off, put it back in the truck, which is going to ultimately save you some money. Pricing for this cold air intake is going to come in at around the $250 mark, which puts it currently as the cheapest K&N cold air intake kit we have on the website. Now that's really not reflective of quality, more of materials used. If you want to spend a little bit extra, you could bump up to the Series 77. That features an aluminum intake tube, might look a little bit better under the hood, depending on your taste. Now also included in that $250 price tag for the Series 63 is going to be K&N's million-mile or 10-year warranty. Before we move on to the install, I did just want to make a quick note. If you do live in one of the more emissions restrictive states, this cold air intake is not CARB certified, so you will have to look for something else to make sure you pass emissions. Install is going to be an easy 1 out of 3 wrenches on our difficulty meter. There's no modification or drilling required to get this on your Tacoma. Should only take you about 90 minutes to 2 hours to get this on your truck. So without any further ado, let me show you how it's done. For this install, you will need an impact, extension, 19mm wrench, 10mm wrench, ratchet, 13mm socket, 12mm socket, short and deep 10mm sockets, 8mm socket, 3 and 4mm Allen keys, trim panel removal tool, Phillips head screwdriver, pliers, and wire cutters. So for the first step of our install, we need to get this engine cover out of the way. All I'm gonna do is pull up on the front lip of that and remove it. Next, we're going to take a 10mm socket and loosen that clamp around the throttle body. So next, I'm going to use a pair of pliers to disconnect this breather hose up by our throttle body. After that, we're going to disconnect our mass airflow sensor and disconnect that from the airbox. Then there's 2 more clips on either side of the airbox. We're going to undo those. Then we should be able to pull off the top half of the airbox and intake tube as one piece. For our mass airflow sensor, all we're going to do is press in this tab here and pull up. So for this clamp on the harness, all we're going to do is pull away this tab and the hood should pop open. So there is one more Christmas tree clip right here holding that harness onto our intake. All we're going to do is support the intake, pull up on that, and it should pop right out. So now we can remove our filter, and there's 3 12mm bolts underneath that we'll be removing to get this bottom half of the airbox out of the way as well. And the last of those 3 is going to be on a tab just north of the airbox. And then the airbox will pull straight up and out of the truck. So now we can move on to the table and start to prep our new K&N cold air intake. And the first thing I'm going to do is take this shield right here and install this weather stripping along this edge. And that's as easy as just going along the edge and pressing it into place. So once that's pressed in place, you can see K&N gives you a little bit extra. I'm going to use some wire cutters to snip that off. So next we're going to grab this coupler from our filter and get that in place using these button head bolts, a couple flat washers and lock washers as well. Then we're going to tighten those down with a 4mm Allen wrench. So next we're going to install this mounting bracket here, and this goes on this hole right here. And we're going to secure that with a 10mm hardware included in the kit. So we're gonna match that up. Feed the bolt through with a flat washer. And then another flat washer. And lastly, a nylock nut. Then we're gonna tighten that down with a 10mm wrench and socket. Now you want to leave that pretty tight but loose enough to spin this around so we can get this correctly oriented when we install it to the truck. So with the new shield completely built, we're ready to put that aside, and we're going to move on to our new intake tube. Now the first thing we're going to install on this is this new fitting. We're going to hand tighten that and then give it a couple turns with a 19mm wrench. Now for the next step, we are going to need to grab our old intake tube because we will be using a Phillips head screwdriver to take that mass airflow sensor out and transfer it over to our new intake tube. With those two screws removed, all you have to do is pull out on that sensor. We're gonna set that right there for now, and our old intake tube we can also set aside. Next, we're going to pull in our new gasket and mounting plate for our mass airflow sensor on our new intake tube. So we're gonna take our adapter plate and flip it over. Same thing for the gasket. Now this gasket gets applied to that adapter plate, so we're going to peel back that adhesive. And you wanna make sure the cutouts here allow for the button head bolts we'll be installing in a second to pass through. And line that up and press it in place. So now we're going to install this plate onto our intake tube. Now you want to make sure you have this oriented correctly. If it's flipped, the direction of that mass airflow sensor will also be flipped, so you want to check that now. But once you have it in place, you can use the rest of those button head bolts to tighten it down to the intake tube. Now that adapter plate does give little feet on either corner. You just want to make sure that this is tight enough that those feet are touching the intake tube. So now we can drop in our mass airflow sensor, and as you can see there's an arrow on there. You want to make sure that this is pointing in that direction. Once you have it in place, you can use the two teeny tiny bolts that come from K&N to tighten that down, and we're going to use a 3mm Allen key to do that. So there is one last thing we have to do to our intake tube, and that is pre-apply some of these couplers. Now this set right here, this coupler is going to go to our air box. they get the little bit larger clamps in the kit. This coupler right here, this is going to go to our throttle body, and the clamps for that are just a little bit smaller. And then we're going to tighten that down with an 8mm socket. And again, this one is going to go toward the throttle body. So we are going to build our K&N intake in pieces on the truck, but real quick, I just wanted to throw it together just so I could put it on the table next to our stock unit and point out some of the key improvements our K&N system is going to make. And the first one is going to be in the looks department. Huge improvement over the stock unit, no question about it. But does it have the performance to back it up? It definitely does, and here's how K&N does it. First off, we're losing this closed box design with a paper element filter inside. That's going to be way more restrictive than our open element design on the K&N with a high flow filter on the front of it. Secondly, we're also losing this flex pipe here. This is going to create some turbulence on the incoming air, cutting into how much power an intake can make. Lastly, we're ditching this resonator box here altogether. Now, the purpose of that from the factory is to cut down on intake noise, make this a little more daily drivable and easier to live with on a daily basis. Here we don't need that, so this is definitely going to be a huge improvement in sound over the stock unit. So without any further ado, let me break this down and show you how to get it on your Tacoma. So now back on the truck, we're going to install these rubber spacers before we drop in our air box, and they just screw into the pre-threaded holes right here on the fender. And that's going to go against this wiring loom here. And the second one is going to go in this position here. And this bumper with studs on either side is going to go in this position here, right behind the power steering fluid. So now we can drop in our air box, making sure it aligns with that one rubber bumper with the threads on it. And the other two, which we're going to secure with a 10mm bolt, and then a nut on that one with the threads. And again, we're going to use the last of those 10mm bolts, flat washers, and lock washers to get our air box secured. And then lastly for this one, we're going to use the last flat washer, and that's the biggest one in the kit, and the 13mm nylock nut to secure that. While we're over here, we're just going to drop our filter in and tighten down that clamp with an 8mm socket. So lastly, we're going to drop in our intake tube, make sure the couplers are seated, tighten the clamps, reinstall our breather hose, and plug back in our map sensor. And the very last step is going to be to reinstall our plastic engine cover. And that is going to do it for my review and install of the K&N Series 63 AirCharger cold air intake, fitting all 60 and newer 3.5 Tacomas. Thank you for watching. I'm Joe. For more videos like this and all things Tacoma, subscribe to Extreme Terrain.